Hello again. Thank you for tuning in. It's been a while since I've been able to post something on YouTube, but I am working on quite a few things, including we're going to be looking at an object lesson through each one of the pieces of the armor of God. So stay tuned. That's going to be really exciting for me, and I'm hoping that you get to enjoy that. But in praying about what to post next, I've looked at the four Greek words for love. I've looked at the armor of God, but there seems to be a question that keeps coming up alongside with other believers about one particular kind of topic, and that topic is reconciliation. The Bible tells us, and this is what I'm going to use as our introduction to what we're going to be covering. The Bible tells us there, it's a very prominent verse. This is 2 Corinthians chapter 5, verses 17, 18, and 19. Most of us know chapter 5, verse 17 of 2 Corinthians. It says, "Therefore, if any man be in Christ, he is a new creature. Old things are passed away. Behold, all things are become new." We know that verse, but when we keep the context of it, we look at verses 18 and 19, we see this, and it says, "And all things are of God, who hath reconciled us to himself by Jesus Christ, and hath given us the ministry of reconciliation, to wit, that God was in Christ reconciling the world unto himself, not imputing their trespasses unto them, and hath committed unto us the word of reconciliation." One of the things questions I'm hearing more and more recently, and this is what spurred on what we're going to do a series of messages on, is what is the difference between forgiveness and reconciliation? Let me say first and foremost that forgiveness and reconciliation are related, but they are not exactly the same thing. And I'm hoping that this series is going to show us what reconciliation is and how it relates not only to forgiveness, but how it relates to the Christian walk and the church life. When we're talking about reconciliation, that word reconciliation, it means to exchange, to balance. One of the examples that you have in life about reconciliation is accounting. I did in high school tutor accounting classes underneath a teacher's aide. I would tutor other students in accounting. And when you're looking at accounting, anybody who's like a CPA or has done any kind of, balancing a checkbook or else, there's always two sides and they have to equal out to the exact same thing. And when we're talking about the major thing about reconciliation, that's exactly what it is. It is a balancing of a relationship that has things on both sides. Forgiveness, when we're talking about forgiveness is very, very much a one-side requirement. We are required as Christians to forgive. If you want to hear more about what forgiveness really entails as far as what it is in its singularity, please look at my message, Ready to Forgive, here on my channel. I'm not going to get too much into forgiveness right now, but that can be done by one person. Somebody can harm me and have absolutely no idea that they have hurt me, and I can be able to, through Christ, forgive them for their trespass. That is part of reconciliation, that balancing, that bringing together of two in a relationship when there is something between them is really what reconciliation is. But to describe it in a way that kind of gives the comparison of the two, forgiveness can be done by a single individual. Forgiveness of trespasses can be done by a single individual. Reconciliation requires at least two to come together. When we take a look at reconciliation in the scriptures, you find it almost 30 times listed in the scriptures. Almost every single time it is the bringing of this party and this party together. And the book that really spells out in the Christian life how reconciliation, what it is, how it's to be done, and what components of it are, the spiritual, the practical, all of those things we find in a little book called Philemon. Let me expand a little bit about reconciliation as it relates to forgiveness and how it fits. We'll get more into this as we do our study through Philemon, but I want to give you kind of an appetizer, if nothing else. When we're talking about reconciliation, a person can be able to totally forgive another person for their trespass. If somebody harms me, somebody does something to me, it hurts, but through Christ, I can forgive them. I cannot impute their sin, their trespass. I cannot hold it against them, if you will. However, the thing that I think that many people disagree on, but is so vitally important for us to understand, is that just because we forgive, it doesn't mean the hurt goes away. It doesn't mean that there isn't a separation between us. A brother offended is harder to be won than, you understand it, but like their contention is like the bars of a castle. It's the idea that no matter what we do or what we say, we can be able to forgive them for what they did to us, but there's always this thing that's between us, the hurt that was caused. There's a level of separation even that can possibly be. Consider when we're talking about forgiveness, there's always going to be sort of an elephant in the room, if you will. And that elephant in the room could be so small that you would have to very much strain to be able to see what that elephant is. And then, of course, there are some elephants, you just can't ignore them. And those need to be taken care of. And so when we're talking about reconciliation specifically, we're not just talking about the forgiveness of the sins. We know that in Christ, sin and all trespasses can be forgiven. But it doesn't mean that the relationship is bound back together or it is made into what it should be. And so when we're talking about reconciliation, we are talking about dealing with the elephants in the room so that the air is clear and there's nothing in between us in the relationship. This is so vitally true about what Christ did with us. When we're reading these verses in 2 Corinthians chapter 5, he says that God hath reconciled us to himself by Jesus Christ and has given us the ministry of reconciliation. It's not enough to go out and preach against sin. It is to preach against sin in the hopes that we might bring people into a relationship with God. With sin in the way, that is impossible. But because of what Jesus Christ did on the cross, what he did in the tomb, what he did in his rising again, that sin can be forgiven. That in the mind of God, if you watch the Isaiah 53 message, God is satisfied with the person and the finished work of Jesus Christ. He is ready to forgive. But that doesn't benefit me. That fact, that truth doesn't benefit me until I come to God through Christ. And when I come to God through Christ, wanting to make right the things that are there, then Jesus, God and man, sinful man, are reconciled together through the blood and the atonement of Jesus Christ, making a new relationship, the relationship we were meant to have in the first place. Again, forgiveness is related directly to reconciliation. But I believe, and I believe when we read through Philemon, reconciliation is not just forgiveness. It is the reconnecting and the restoring of a relationship between two people who did not have as strong of a relationship as before. And we see that in the book of Philemon. So I'm going to do over the next weeks, months, whatever it's going to take to be able to get this done, I'm going to go through verse by verse through the book of Philemon. And I'm hoping that as you see how God has set up the picture of reconciliation, especially between Philemon and Onesimus, it shows not only how God and sinful man can be reconciled in Christ, but how Christians that have that elephant in the room can not only forgive, but have the relationship reconciled. It is truly one of the beliefs I have that that's what's missing in so many churches. Why so many churches struggle with forgiveness is because they're forgetting the end game is the reconciliation of the relationship. And so I'm hoping that this study through Philemon is going to be a blessing to you. Tune in. I'm going to be posting the first verses 1 and 2 real soon. God bless, and you have a wonderful day.